Um, Imagine you are traveling in a foreign country. You're having a great time exploring, eating amazing food, but suddenly you wake up one morning and you feel this strange, sharp pain.
Oh, yeah. That is the worst.
Right. So you finally make it to a local doctor's office. You sit down on that crinkly paper on the examination table, and the doctor looks at you and asks you to describe the pain. And your mind just goes totally blank.
It is a uniquely terrifying feeling, honestly. I mean, you know exactly what the pain feels like, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a dull ache, maybe it's a sharp stab, but the precise English words to explain it to a medical professional have just completely vanished from your brain.
Exactly. And that is the exact scenario we are tackling today. Welcome to a special English Effect deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So our mission today is to give you, the listener, the exact medical vocabulary to be your own best advocate when you are feeling most vulnerable. We're going to explore human anatomy, but not just as a basic list of parts.
Right, because that's boring.
Exactly. We want to look at how medical professionals actually talk about the body, focusing on the evolutionary trade-offs our bodies made, like how we balance absolute protection with incredible mobility and, well, the medical consequences of that balance.
Because when you understand the why behind how your body is built, the English terminology becomes so much easier to remember. It's not just rote memorization anymore, it's understanding the biomechanical logic.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And in a clinical setting, being able to articulate exactly where a structural failure happened can drastically change the quality of care you receive.
So let's start at the very top. The ultimate evolutionary priority, which is, of course, the head.
Right.
Medical professionals treat the head, that uppermost part of your body, not just as another region, but as this incredibly vulnerable container.
Yeah, it houses the brain, the literal core of our central nervous system. And because it is so critical, it is encased in the hard bone of the skull.
But I was reading that there's a medical reality here that trips people up.
Oh, absolutely. The skull is essentially a rigid motorcycle helmet, but the brain inside is floating in a pool of cerebrospinal fluid.
So when doctors give that standard warning, like to be careful not to bump your head on a low ceiling or a doorway, it's not actually the external bone they are worried about.
Precisely. I mean, if you hit your head hard enough, the skull stops moving, but the brain keeps going. It sloshes forward and hits the inside of the skull.
Ouch.
Yeah. That is the mechanism of a concussion. So in English medical terms, when assessing a trauma, a doctor isn't just looking for a surface cut. They are asking questions to determine if that internal sloshing caused neurological disruption.
Wow. But that raises a massive question for me. If the brain is so unbelievably vital that it needs a bone helmet, why on earth did we evolve this incredibly fragile neck to hold it up?
Right, seems counterintuitive.
It really does.
Hmm.
It seems like a massive design flaw to put the command center on a tiny unprotected swivel. Like, why the neck?
Well, it's the ultimate evolutionary trade-off. We traded heavy, thick armor for sensory mobility. By having a flexible neck, that delicate structure connecting the head to the rest of the body, early humans could quickly scan their environment for predators.
Oh, I see.
But the cost of that mobility is extreme medical vulnerability.
Which explains exactly what happens at the scene of a severe accident.
Yeah,
I mean, the very first thing a paramedic will do is immobilize a patient's neck.
exactly.
They will carefully check if you can move it from side to side before doing literally anything else.
They have to. All of your vital supply lines, the airway, the major blood vessels supplying the brain, and the cervical spine carrying your entire nervous system, they're all packed into that tiny corridor of the neck. If that is compromised, nothing else matters.
Wow. Which transitions perfectly into the area right below it, where the body actually did invest in heavy armor. I'm talking about the chest.
Ah, yes, the fortress.
Exactly. When you look at an anatomical diagram, the chest, that entire region located between the neck and the abdomen, looks like a biological cage.
Because the rib cage is designed to be the ultimate shock absorber. Its primary function is to act as a protective shield for the cardiovascular and respiratory systems.
So the heart and lungs.
Right. In English medical contexts, you'll often hear doctors order an immediate X-ray of the chest after a blunt force trauma, like a steering wheel impact in a car crash.
And they're doing that to see if the armor held up, right? Because if the ribs protecting your heart and lungs crack and puncture those organs, you only have minutes.
Exactly. It's a strict hierarchy of survival. I mean, they will bypass a shattered leg to check the chest because a compromised respiratory system is an immediate threat to life.
Okay, so if that's our heavy armor, how does that armor connect to the rest of the world? That brings us to the shoulder.
The connector.
Right. This joint at the base of the neck connects our arms to our body. But I've always wondered, why is it that shoulder dislocations are so incredibly common in sports or falls, but you rarely ever hear about someone dislocating their elbow?
That goes right back to the trade-off we discussed earlier. The shoulder is a shallow ball and socket joint. It sacrifices structural stability to give you a massive multi-directional range of motion.
So you need that flexibility.
Oh, absolutely. You needed to throw a baseball, swim, or, just reach the top shelf in your kitchen. But because the socket is so shallow, any sudden unnatural force can easily pop the shoulder joint right out of place.
It's like balancing a golf ball on a golf tee. Highly movable, but incredibly prone to falling off.
That is a perfect analogy.
And that connects directly to the entire arm. In clinical settings, when a nurse says they are going to gently lift your arm to apply a dressing, they are talking about the entire upper limb, right? Extending from that shallow shoulder joint all the way down to the hand.
Right, and the terminology matters here because patients often misidentify where their pain originates.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, a patient might complain about pain radiating down their arm, and the doctor knows that due to how nerves travel through that entire upper limb, a pinched nerve in the neck might actually manifest as a burning sensation near the bicep.
Oh, wow. That completely throws you off if you don't know anatomy. That makes total sense, though. Now, let's go back to my previous question about the joint right in the middle of that limb, the elbow.
Right.
It's the curved joint that allows the arm to bend. Why is it so much more stable than the shoulder? Can you imagine if we couldn't bend our elbow? Our arms would just be stiff planks.
They really would be. But it's stable because the elbow is fundamentally a hinge joint. It doesn't need to rotate 360 degrees. It essentially just opens and closes.
Just one direction.
Exactly.
Wow.
By limiting its movement to one primary plane flexion and extension, the elbow traded that wild circular mobility for pure mechanical leverage. It's a much deeper, more locked-in joint.
But then, just a little further down, we throw stability completely out the window again with the wrist.
Oh, the wrist, yeah.
I mean, that highly flexible lower end of the forearm connecting to the hand, it feels so incredibly complex compared to a simple hinge.
It is an architectural marvel, but highly fragile. The wrist is composed of 8 tiny carpal bones held together by a web of ligaments. It acts as a highly flexible bridge.
And that flexibility is exactly why it shatters so often when people trip.
Yes, unfortunately.
Think about the instinct when you break a fall. You throw your hands out, all of your downward kinetic energy crashes into the ground, and those 8 tiny, delicate bones in the wrist absorb the entire shock wave.
And when you injure it, you realize just how crucial it is. I mean, a sprain or fracture there completely stops you from bearing weight, lifting heavy things, or even turning a doorknob. It completely disables the use of the extremity below it.
Which brings us to what many consider the ultimate tool of human evolution,
Yeah.
the hand.
Yes.
We moved from the heavy armor of the chest down the levers of the arm to this complex part, specifically designed to hold, grasp, and manipulate our environment.
The human hand is what separates us from almost every other species. It is capable of tremendous grip strength for gross motor functions, like holding a heavy tool, but also capable of incredibly delicate, fine motor skills, like performing microscopic surgery or playing a violin.
And the true stars of that fine motor capability are the fingers. But I have to ask about the pain factor here.
Oh, the pain factor.
Yeah, why is it that trapping your fingers in a car door or hitting them with a hammer feels so disproportionately agonizing compared to, say, banging your shin?
It has to do with how our brains map sensory input. Because the fingers, those incredibly useful but delicate digits at the end of the hand, they are our primary way of exploring the physical world. So they are packed with an immensely high density of nerve endings.
Ah, I see.
Your brain dedicates a massive amount of its sensory processing power specifically to them.
So it's a feature, not a bug. High nerve density gives us amazing touch sensitivity, but the horrible consequence is that when those fingers are crushed, the brain receives an overwhelming concentrated blast of pain signals.
Exactly. The body is essentially screaming at you to protect your most valuable tools.
Wow. So we've mapped out how we protect our vital organs and how we manipulate our environment. Let's pivot to the powerhouses.
The lower body.
Right. We need raw mechanical power to move this whole structure through the world, which brings us to the lower body. And the anchor point for all that power is the hip.
The hip is the body's largest weight-bearing joint. It's located below the waist, securely connecting the leg to the torso.
So unlike the shoulder, it's not a shallow socket.
Not at all. This joint is deeply embedded into the pelvis for maximum stability. It has to endure the constant compounding weight of the entire upper body every single time you take a step.
But with that constant weight bearing comes a lot of structural fatigue. I mean, we constantly hear medical advice warning that older adults must be exceptionally careful because a fall that injures the hip can be life-altering. Why is it so uniquely devastating as we age?
It really comes down to bone density. As people age, conditions like osteoporosis cause the bones to become porous and brittle. A simple slip on a wet floor might just cause a bruise in a 20-year-old.
Right.
But for an older adult, that exact same impact can fracture the neck of the femur inside the hip. And because that joint is the literal linchpin of mobility, a break there often leads to long-term bed rest, which cascades into other severe health issues.
That's terrifying. And moving down from that major anchor, we hit the thigh.
Yes, the engine room.
Exactly. This is the upper part of the leg between the hip and knee.
Hmm.
When you look at the anatomy, this area is just pure, unadulterated engine.
It truly is. The thigh houses the quadriceps in the front and the hamstrings in the back. These are some of the thickest, most powerful muscles in the human body.
You rely on the massive kinetic energy generated in the thigh for everything from, standing up out of a chair to breaking into a full sprint.
Absolutely. But all of that tremendous force has to go somewhere. The energy travels down the chain.
Which brings us to the most frequently punished joint in sports medicine, the knee.
Yes.
This is the crucial complex joint connecting the thigh to the lower leg. And I want to dig into this because I was reading a clinical breakdown in our sources about runner's knee, which is characterized by a sharp pain in the front of the joint.
Mm-hmm.
But the study said this pain is frequently caused by having weak hips. This completely threw me. Why does a muscular weakness way up in the hips manifest as a severe pain further down in the knee?
That is one of the most fascinating concepts in biomechanics. It's called the kinetic chain.
The kinetic chain.
Right. Think of your leg as a series of connected links. If your hip muscles are weak, your pelvis cannot remain stable when your foot strikes the ground. That slight instability forces the entire leg bone to rotate slightly inward to compensate.
Oh, I see. So the hinge is no longer aligned.
Exactly. So now the knee isn't bending in a perfectly straight, clean line like it was designed to. It's twisting slightly with every single footfall.
That sounds painful.
It is. Over thousands of running strides, that unnatural grinding pressure wears away the cartilage behind the kneecap. So in medical diagnostics, the pain is felt in the joint, but the doctor knows the victim is the knee, while the actual culprit is the hip.
The victim and the culprit. That perfectly illustrates why doctors don't just look at the site of the pain, but the mechanics of the whole body.
Exactly.
The energy doesn't stop there, though. All that immense force generated by the thighs and knees has to eventually meet the ground. And the bottleneck for all that downward force is the ankle.
Yes, the ankle is the vital joint that joins the leg and the foot. It is completely essential for upright mobility, but it is handed an almost impossible biomechanical task.
How so?
Well, it has to support your entire body weight while simultaneously pivoting, tilting, and adapting to completely unpredictable terrain.
Which is exactly why rolling an ankle is one of the most common orthopedic injuries in the world. I mean, you take a simple misstep off a curb or land awkwardly on uneven grass, the joint rolls past its limit, and suddenly you are limping for weeks.
And this is where medical English is crucial. Patients often confuse a sprain with a break. When you violently roll the ankle, you are often overstretching or tearing the ligaments that hold the bones together. That's a sprain.
Right.
Recovery requires rigorous physical therapy to ensure those ligaments heal tightly. Otherwise, the joint remains permanently unstable.
And right below that joint, taking the absolute first physical impact with the earth, is the heel.
The impact zone.
Yeah, that is the hind or back part of the foot below the ankle that strikes the ground first when you walk.
It contains the calcaneus, the largest bone in the foot. It is biologically designed to be your primary shock absorber.
But it has a breaking point, right? The sources point out that runners frequently develop plantar fasciitis, or sharp bone pain, right there in the heel from training on hard, unnatural surfaces like concrete.
It's a repetitive stress injury. Evolution designed the heel to strike dirt and grass, not paved asphalt.
That makes sense.
When you pound the pavement, the raw shockwaves travel straight up the calcaneus. That is why podiatrists emphasize the need for specialized running shoes with massive foam support to artificially cushion that foundation.
And finally, right at the very edge of that structural foundation, we have the toes.
The unsung heroes.
They really are. These are the small digits on the foot that most people completely ignore and though they accidentally stub one in the dark.
They are easily ignored, but structurally vital.
I always think of the toes as tiny biological gyroscopes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you don't realize it, but they are constantly gripping the floor, making micro adjustments to shifts in your weight to keep our heavy, incredibly tall bodies balanced on two relatively small platforms.
That is a brilliant analogy. They widen your base of support. When you push off to take a step, the big toe acts as a crucial lever to propel your entire body weight forward.
It perfectly explains why the sources mentioned the immense relief trauma patients feel when they learn they haven't broken any toes in an accident.
Yeah.
You literally need those tiny digits for the mechanics of every single step. Without them, your natural balance is completely destroyed.
The architecture of the foot really is a masterpiece of engineering, managing all the kinetic energy that starts all the way up in the torso.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we've traced the entire evolutionary story today. We've seen how the body balances the vulnerable command center of the head, relies on the armored protection of the chest, utilizes the highly mobile tools of the arms, and manages the massive kinetic energy generated by the thighs all the way down to those tiny gyroscopes balancing us on the ground.
It's all connected. And if we bring this back to your goal as a listener, mastering this medical English, remember that passively listening to these terms is just the first step.
Right.
To confidently use this vocabulary the next time you are in a doctor's office, you need to actively apply it. Try this simple 3-step plan. First, pick 3 new words we explored today. Second, write a complete sentence for each one, specifically relating it to a past injury or medical experience you've actually had. And third, say those sentences out loud. Speaking the words physically trains your brain to retrieve them when you are under stress.
That is incredibly practical advice for making it stick. If you found this deep dive helpful, please like it, share it with someone who would enjoy the conversation, and make sure to subscribe to the English Effect channel for more deep dives into essential, real-world vocabulary.
Yeah, we've got plenty more coming.
But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. The next time you take a simple step forward, or effortlessly reach out and pick up a coffee cup, take a single second to appreciate what just happened. Trillions of cells fired electrical signals from your brain down your spinal cord, coordinating a perfect, instantaneous mechanical chain of joints, muscles, and ligaments, all executing flawlessly without you even having to consciously think about it. It makes you realize that your body isn't just something you inhabit, it is the most extraordinary, highly tuned machine you will ever own. Treat it well.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.